In the quiet, misty dawn at Willow Creek Ranch, Samuel Hayes's peaceful morning shatters when an unexpected bullet strikes his cherished horse, Thunder. What begins as an ordinary day quickly spirals into a heart-pounding mystery filled with unforeseen twists, raw emotion, and secrets waiting to be uncovered. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. Thank you. The early morning mist clung to the rolling hills of Willow Creek Ranch, a sprawling expanse of lush pastures and weathered fence lines that had been in the Hayes family for generations. Samuel Hayes, a man whose weathered face and calloused hands told the story of a life devoted to the land and his animals, stood on the porch of his modest farmhouse, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, as he watched the sun slowly peek over the horizon. His eyes, still sharp despite his advancing years, scanned the misty fields until they settled on a familiar silhouette in the distance. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth as he recognized the proud stance of his prized horse, Thunder. Thunder was more than just a horse to Samuel. He was a companion, a confidant, and a link to cherished memories. The magnificent chestnut stallion had been born on the ranch 15 years ago, the last foal of Samuel's favorite mare before she passed. From the moment Thunder took his first wobbly steps, Samuel knew there was something special about him. As Samuel watched Thunder graze peacefully in the early morning light, his mind wandered back to the countless rides they had shared over the years. Thunder had been there through it all, the good times and the bad. When Samuel's wife, Laura, passed away 5 years ago, it was Thunder who seemed to understand his grief, offering silent comfort during their long rides through the countryside. With a contented sigh, Samuel set down his empty mug and made his way down the porch steps. It was time to start the day's chores, and as always, Thunder would be by his side. "Morning, old friend," Samuel called out as he approached the fence line. Thunder's ears perked up at the sound of his voice, and the horse trotted over, nickering softly in greeting. Samuel reached out to stroke Thunder's velvety nose, marveling at the bond they shared. "How about we open up that gate and let you stretch those legs properly, huh?" he said, already moving towards the gate. It was their morning ritual. Samuel would let Thunder out into the larger pasture to run and play, while he tended to the other animals and tasks around the ranch. As he swung the gate open, Samuel couldn't help but chuckle at Thunder's eagerness. The horse pranced in place, barely containing his excitement. "Go on then," Samuel said with a laugh. "Have your fun. I'll be back to check on you later." With a joyful whinny, Thunder took off across the field, his powerful legs eating up the ground as he ran. Samuel watched him go, feeling a swell of pride and affection. Even after all these years, the sight of Thunder in full gallop never failed to take his breath away. Little did Samuel know that this ordinary morning was about to take a turn that would test the bonds of their friendship and change their lives forever. Several miles away, on the outskirts of Willow Creek Ranch, two men were setting up for a day of sports shooting. Thomas Bennett and his brother-in-law, Michael Walker, had driven out from the city for a weekend getaway, eager to escape the hustle and bustle of urban life. "Perfect spot, don't you think?" Thomas called out as he unloaded their gear from the truck. "Nice and isolated, we can shoot to our heart's content without worrying about disturbing anyone." Michael nodded in agreement, taking in the picturesque landscape. "It's beautiful out here. Reminds me of when we were kids heading out to Grandpa's farm for the summer." As they set up their clay pigeon thrower and prepared their shotguns, neither man noticed how close they were to the property line of Willow Creek Ranch. The no trespassing sign that should have warned them was hidden behind overgrown bushes, invisible to their eager eyes. "All right," Thomas said, hefting his shotgun. "Let's see if you can still outshoot me, little brother." Michael grinned, rising to the challenge. "You're on. Loser buys dinner tonight." With that, they began their game, the sound of gunshots echoing across the otherwise peaceful countryside. Back at the ranch, Samuel had just finished mucking out the stables when he heard the distant pop of gunfire. He frowned, pausing in his work to listen more closely. It wasn't unusual to hear the occasional hunter in the area, but something about the rhythmic nature of these shots made him uneasy. His thoughts immediately went to Thunder, out in the open pasture. The horse had never shown any fear of gunshots before. Samuel had made sure to accustom him to loud noises from a young age, but still a nagging worry tugged at his mind. "Better go check on him," Samuel muttered to himself, setting aside his pitchfork and heading toward the pasture. As he walked, the gunshots continued, growing slightly louder. Samuel quickened his pace, a sense of urgency building in his chest. He reached the crest of a small hill that overlooked the pasture and scanned the area for Thunder. At first, he didn't see the horse, which was unusual. Thunder typically stayed within sight of the ranch buildings, even when given free rein of the larger pasture. Samuel's eyes darted across the field, searching for any sign of movement. Then he saw him. Thunder was standing at the far end of the pasture near the property line. Even from this distance, Samuel could tell something was wrong. The horse's head was lowered, and he seemed to be favoring one of his legs. "Thunder!" Samuel called out, his voice tinged with concern. He began to jog towards the horse, his aging joints protesting the sudden exertion. As he drew closer, the full extent of the situation became horrifyingly clear. Thunder's left hind leg was covered in blood, a stark crimson against his chestnut coat. The horse's sides heaved with labored breaths, and his eyes were wide with pain and fear. "Oh God," Samuel breathed, his heart pounding in his chest. He approached Thunder slowly, speaking in low, soothing tones. "Easy, boy. Easy now. Let me take a look." Thunder whinnied softly, recognizing Samuel's voice. He didn't shy away as Samuel carefully examined the wound. It was a gunshot, no doubt about it. The bullet had torn through the muscle of Thunder's upper leg, leaving a ragged, bleeding hole. Samuel's mind raced. How could this have happened? Then he remembered the gunshots he'd heard earlier. A cold fury began to build inside him, warring with his concern for Thunder. "We need to get you back to the barn," Samuel said, gently stroking Thunder's neck. "Can you walk, old friend?" As if in response, Thunder took a tentative step forward, his injured leg barely touching the ground. He stumbled, nearly falling, but Samuel was there to steady him. "That's it," Samuel encouraged, his voice thick with emotion. "Nice and slow, we'll get through this together." The journey back to the barn was agonizingly slow. Every step seemed to cause Thunder pain, but the loyal horse pressed on, trusting Samuel implicitly. By the time they reached the barn, both man and horse were exhausted and covered in sweat. Samuel led Thunder into his stall and immediately reached for his cell phone, dialing the number for Dr. Laura Collins, the local veterinarian. As the phone rang, he gathered clean towels and a bucket of water, doing his best to clean the wound while they waited. "Willow Creek Veterinary Clinic. This is Dr. Collins," came the crisp, professional voice on the other end of the line. "Laura, it's Samuel Hayes," Samuel said, his voice urgent. "I need you out at the ranch right away. Thunder's been shot." There was a moment of stunned silence before Laura replied, "I'm on my way, Samuel. Keep pressure on the wound and try to keep him calm. I'll be there as fast as I can." As Samuel hung up the phone, he heard the sound of a truck pulling up outside the barn. His jaw clenched as he recognized the voices of Thomas Bennett and Michael Walker, his nearest neighbors. "Samuel, you in there?" Thomas called out, his voice hesitant. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Samuel stepped out of the barn to confront them. The looks on their faces told him everything he needed to know. We didn't know," Michael stammered, his face pale. "We were just out for some target practice." "And you didn't think to check where you were shooting?" Samuel snapped, his usual calm demeanor cracking under the weight of his worry and anger. Thomas stepped forward, his expression a mix of guilt and concern. "We're so sorry, Samuel. We heard the horse cry out and came running. Is he going to be okay?" Samuel ran a hand through his thinning hair, suddenly feeling every one of his 65 years. "I don't know," he admitted. "The vet's on her way, but it's bad. Real bad." The gravity of the situation seemed to hit the two men then. They exchanged a glance before Thomas spoke up again. "Whatever it costs, Samuel, we'll cover it. And if there's anything else we can do." Samuel nodded curtly, too preoccupied with worry for Thunder to fully process their offer. Just wait here. The vet will want to know exactly what happened." With that, he turned and went back into the barn, leaving Thomas and Michael to wait anxiously outside. "Doctor?" Laura Collins arrived in record time, her truck kicking up dust as she pulled into the ranch yard. She grabbed her medical bag and hurried into the barn, her experienced eyes immediately assessing the situation. "Oh, Thunder," she murmured, approaching the injured horse. Thunder nickered weakly in response, recognizing the vet who had cared for him since he was a foal. Laura's examination was thorough and efficient. She cleaned the wound more thoroughly, administered pain medication, and took x-rays with her portable machine. All the while, Samuel hovered nearby, his face etched with worry. Finally, Laura straightened up and turned to Samuel. Her expression was grave. "The bullet's done some serious damage, Samuel. It's fractured the bone and torn through a lot of muscle tissue." Samuel felt his heart sink. "But you can fix it, right? He'll be okay." Laura hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I can treat the wound and set the bone. But Samuel, for a horse, an injury like this, it would be a miracle if he could walk normally again, let alone run." The words hit Samuel like a physical blow. He stumbled back, leaning against the barn wall for support. "What are you saying, Laura?" "I'm saying we have some tough decisions to make," Laura replied gently. "I know how much Thunder means to you, Samuel, but you have to consider his quality of life. A horse that can't run or jump for many, that's no life at all." Samuel shook his head vehemently. No, I won't give up on him. Thunder's a fighter. He's got more heart than any animal I've ever known. If anyone can beat this, it's him." Laura nodded, understanding the depth of Samuel's attachment to Thunder. "All right, we'll do everything we can. But Samuel, you need to be prepared. The road ahead is going to be long and difficult for both of you." "I don't care how long it takes," Samuel said firmly. "Thunder's family, and you don't give up on family." With that decided, they got to work. Laura cleaned and debrided the wound, set the fractured bone, and stitched up the torn muscle as best she could. She administered antibiotics to prevent infection and left Samuel with a regimen of medications and care instructions. As she packed up her equipment, Laura placed a comforting hand on Samuel's shoulder. "You did good, Samuel. He's stable for now. But remember what I said. This is just the beginning. The real challenge starts now." Samuel nodded, his eyes never leaving Thunder. "I understand. Thank you, Laura, for everything." After Laura left, Samuel stepped out of the barn to find Thomas and Michael still waiting. He gave them a brief update on Thunder's condition and accepted their offer to pay for the veterinary bills and any ongoing care costs. While their remorse seemed genuine, Samuel couldn't bring himself to absolve them completely. Not yet. Not while Thunder's future remained so uncertain. As night fell over Willow Creek Ranch, Samuel settled into a chair beside Thunder's stall, prepared for a long vigil. He reached out to stroke the horse's nose gently. "You and me, old friend," he murmured. "We've been through a lot together and we'll get through this too, I promise." Thunder's soft nicker was the only response, but to Samuel it sounded like a promise of its own. The days that followed were some of the most challenging Samuel had ever faced. Thunder's recovery was slow and fraught with setbacks. The horse's naturally active temperament made it difficult for him to stay still and allow his injuries to heal. More than once, Samuel found Thunder trying to stand or move around his stall, reopening his wounds in the process. Each time this happened, Samuel's heart would break a little more. He could see the frustration in Thunder's eyes, the confusion as to why his body wouldn't obey his commands as it always had before. It was during these moments that Laura's words about quality of life would echo in Samuel's mind, planting seeds of doubt that he struggled to ignore. But for every moment of despair, there were glimmers of hope that kept Samuel going. Like the day about 2 weeks after the accident, when he entered the barn to find Thunder standing on all 4 legs for the first time since the shooting. The horse's injured leg trembled with the effort, and he could only maintain the position for a few seconds. But to Samuel, it felt like a miracle. "That's it, boy," Samuel encouraged, his voice thick with emotion. "You've got this one day at a time." As the weeks turned into months, a routine developed. Every morning, Samuel would clean Thunder's wound, change his bandages, and administer his medications. Then he would help Thunder through a series of gentle exercises designed to strengthen his injured leg without putting too much strain on it. In the afternoons, when the summer sun was at its hottest, Samuel would sit in Thunder's stall, reading aloud from old Western novels. He wasn't sure if Thunder understood the words, but the horse seemed to enjoy the sound of his voice, often resting his head on Samuel's shoulder as he read. The evenings were reserved for what Samuel called their pep talks. He would pull up his chair and talk to Thunder about anything and everything, memories of their past adventures, plans for the future, his fears and his hopes. Sometimes in the quiet of the barn with only Thunder as a witness, Samuel would allow himself to cry, releasing the worry and stress that built up during the day. Through it all, Thunder seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. The horse, normally so spirited and full of energy, displayed a patience that amazed Samuel. He stood still for his treatments, worked diligently at his exercises, and seemed to draw strength from Samuel's presence, just as Samuel drew strength from his. As summer faded into fall, Thunder's progress became more noticeable. He could stand for longer periods and even take a few halting steps around his stall. Dr. Collins, who visited regularly to check on his progress, was cautiously optimistic. "He's defying the odds, Samuel," she said during one of her visits, watching as Thunder carefully navigated the length of his stall. "I've never seen anything quite like it, but he's still got a long way to go before we can even think about him leaving the barn, let alone running again." Samuel nodded, understanding the unspoken warning in her words. "Don't get your hopes up too high." But as he watched Thunder determinedly placing one hoof in front of the other, he couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. It was around this time that Samuel began to notice something else, a change in himself. The long hours spent with Thunder, the shared struggle and small victories, had awakened something in him that he thought he'd lost after Laura's death. A sense of purpose, a reason to get up each morning that went beyond the routine of running the ranch. He found himself talking more to his neighbors, sharing updates on Thunder's progress. Thomas and Michael, still carrying the guilt of their role in the accident, became regular visitors, often bringing treats for Thunder or offering to help with chores around the ranch so Samuel could spend more time with his recovering horse. As the leaves began to turn and a chill crept into the air, Samuel decided it was time for Thunder's next big step, leaving the barn. He discussed it with Dr. Collins, who agreed that some gentle walking in the fresh air could be beneficial. As long as they were extremely careful, the day they chose was perfect, crisp and clear, with a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Samuel led Thunder to the barn door, speaking softly to him the whole time. "All right, old friend," he said, his hand steady on Thunder's neck. "We're going to take it nice and slow. You just let me know if it gets to be too much." As Samuel opened the barn door, Thunder's ears pricked forward, his nostrils flaring as he caught the scent of the outdoors. For a moment, the horse hesitated, seemingly unsure about leaving the safety of his stall. But then, with a soft nicker of determination, he took a careful step forward. Samuel felt a lump form in his throat as he watched Thunder take his first steps outside in months. The horse moved slowly, each step deliberate and cautious, but there was an unmistakable eagerness in his movements. It was as if Thunder knew how important this moment was, not just for his recovery, but for Samuel as well. They made their way across the yard, Thunder's injured leg still noticeably weaker than the others, but holding steady, Samuel kept a close eye on his friend, ready to support him at the first sign of trouble. But Thunder pressed on, his head held high, drinking in the sights and smells of the world he'd been separated from for so long. As they reached the fence line of the small paddock near the barn, Samuel heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. He turned to see Thomas and Michael pulling up in their truck, their faces a mix of surprise and joy at the sight before them. "Well, I'll be damned," Thomas said as he climbed out of the truck. "Look at him go!" Michael joined his brother-in-law, shaking his head in amazement. "Samuel, it's incredible, we never thought." Samuel nodded, understanding their amazement. He felt it too, every single day. "He's a fighter, this one," he said, patting Thunder's neck gently, too stubborn to give up. The two men approached slowly, careful not to startle Thunder. The horse regarded them calmly, showing no sign of fear or agitation. If anything, he seemed to stand a little taller, as if proud to show off his progress to an audience. Can we help at all?" Michael asked hesitantly. It was a great surprise. It was clear that both men still carried the weight of their role in Thunder's injury, despite Samuel's assurances that he no longer blamed them. Samuel considered for a moment, then nodded. "Actually, yeah, think you could grab some brushes from the tack room? I reckon Thunder here has earned himself a good grooming after all this excitement. The simple task seemed to lift a weight from Thomas and Michael's shoulders. They hurried off to the barn, eager to be useful. Samuel used the moment alone with Thunder to check on him, running his hands along the horse's legs and body, feeling for any signs of strain or discomfort. "How are you doing, boy?" he murmured. "Had enough for one day?" Thunder responded by gently butting his head against Samuel's chest, nearly knocking the old rancher off balance. Samuel laughed, a sound that had become all too rare in recent months. All right, message received. A few more minutes won't hurt." When Thomas and Michael returned with the brushes, Samuel showed them how to groom Thunder properly, paying special attention to his injured leg. The horse stood patiently, clearly enjoying the attention and the feeling of the brushes against his coat. As they worked, Samuel found himself opening up to the two men in a way he hadn't since the accident. He told them about the long nights in the barn, the small victories and painful setbacks, the moments of despair, and the flickers of hope that had gotten them this far. Thomas and Michael listened intently, their brushes moving in steady, gentle strokes across Thunder's coat. By the time Samuel finished speaking, Thunder's chestnut coat was gleaming in the autumn sunlight, and there was a new understanding between the three men. "Samuel," Thomas said finally, his voice gruff with emotion, "what you've done here, it's amazing. Not just for Thunder, but for yourself too. You know Laura would be proud of you, don't you?" The mention of his late wife's name caught Samuel off guard. For a moment, he was transported back to happier times, Laura laughing as she watched him and Thunder galloping across the fields, her eyes shining with love and pride. The memory, instead of bringing pain as it once had, filled him with a warm sense of peace. "Yeah," he said softly, blinking back tears. "Yeah, I reckon she would be." As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Samuel knew it was time to bring Thunder back to the barn. The horse had done more than enough for one day, and Samuel didn't want to risk overtiring him. With Thomas and Michael's help, they slowly made their way back to the barn. Thunder's steps were a bit slower now, fatigue evident in the slight drag of his injured leg, but his head was still held high. As they reached the barn door, the horse paused, turning his head to look back at the open fields beyond. In that moment, Samuel saw a flicker of the old Thunder, the spirited, untamed energy that had always defined him. It was a promise of things to come, a silent vow that this setback, no matter how severe, would not be the end of their story. "Soon, old friend," Samuel promised, his voice barely above a whisper, "we'll be back out there soon enough." As they settled Thunder back into his stall, making sure he was comfortable and had plenty of fresh water and hay, Samuel felt a renewed sense of determination. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but today had shown him that miracles were possible. With patience, love, and unwavering dedication, Thunder might just beat the odds. Thomas and Michael said their goodbyes, promising to return soon to help out however they could. As their truck disappeared down the driveway, Samuel turned back to Thunder, who was contentedly munching on his hay. "Well, boy," he said, leaning against the stall door, "what do you say we make a deal? You keep fighting, keep getting stronger, and I promise you this. Come spring, we'll ride again. It might not be the wild gallops we used to enjoy, but we'll be out there together. That sound good to you?" Thunder lifted his head, fixing Samuel with those intelligent brown eyes that seemed to see right into his soul. Then, as if sealing the deal, he nickered softly and stretched his neck out, nuzzling Samuel's shoulder. Samuel chuckled, patting the horse's neck. "I'll take that as a yes." As he left the barn that evening, Samuel felt lighter than he had in months. The future, which had seemed so bleak and uncertain after the accident, now held the promise of hope. It wouldn't be easy, recovery never was, but with Thunder by his side, Samuel knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days grew shorter and colder as autumn deepened into winter, but the warmth inside Willow Creek Ranch's barn never faded. Each day brought new progress, small victories that Samuel cherished like precious gems. Thunder's strength continued to improve, his injured leg growing steadier with each passing week. Dr. Collins's visits became less frequent as Thunder's condition stabilized, but her amazement at his progress never waned. "I've never seen anything like it," she confessed during one checkup, watching as Thunder easily walked the length of the barn aisle. "By all medical logic, he shouldn't be doing this well. But then again, I suppose Thunder's never been one to follow the rules, has he?" Samuel couldn't help but beam with pride at her words. "No, ma'am, he certainly hasn't." As winter settled over the ranch, blanketing the fields in snow, Samuel and Thunder developed a new routine. Each day, weather permitting, they would venture out into the snow-covered paddock. Thunder seemed to delight in the crunch of snow beneath his hooves, often playfully tossing his head and snorting plumes of steam into the frigid air. These outings served a dual purpose. They helped Thunder build his strength and endurance, and they gave Samuel a renewed appreciation for the beauty of his land. Seeing it through Thunder's eyes with the wonder of rediscovery made even the harshest winter day seem magical. The local community, having heard of Thunder's remarkable recovery, rallied around Samuel and his horse. Neighbors would stop by with treats for Thunder or casseroles for Samuel. The local feed store owner insisted on delivering Thunder's feed personally, free of charge. Even the town's children got involved, creating get-well cards for Thunder that Samuel proudly displayed in the barn. This outpouring of support touched Samuel deeply. He had always been a private man, especially since Laura's passing, but he found himself opening up more, sharing his progress and his own hopes and fears with those who asked. It was as if Thunder's journey wasn't just healing the horse, but was helping Samuel reconnect with the world around him as well. As winter began to loosen its grip on the land, giving way to the first tentative signs of spring, Samuel's thoughts turned more and more to the promise he had made to Thunder. The idea of riding again, which had seemed like an impossible dream months ago, was starting to feel like a real possibility. He discussed it with Dr. Collins during her next visit, voicing his hopes and concerns. She listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. "Physically, he's made remarkable progress," she said, running her hand along Thunder's now-healed leg. "The muscle has rebuilt nicely and the bone has mended well. But Samuel, you have to understand, he'll never be the same horse he was before. There will always be a weakness there, a vulnerability." Samuel nodded, having expected as much. "I know, but do you think, with the right precautions, the right approach, do you think it might be possible?" Dr. Collins was quiet for a long moment, her eyes moving from Thunder to Samuel and back again. Finally, she sighed. "If you'd asked me this 6 months ago, I'd have said absolutely not. But now, Samuel, I've learned not to underestimate either of you. If you're willing to take it slow, to listen to Thunder and not push too hard, then yes, I think it might be possible." The words sent a thrill through Samuel. He looked at Thunder, who was watching the conversation with pricked ears, as if he understood every word. "You hear that, boy?" he said softly. "Looks like we might just keep that promise after all." With Dr. Collins's cautious approval, Samuel began to prepare for their first ride. He had Thunder's saddle and tack thoroughly checked and adjusted to ensure maximum comfort. He researched gentle exercises to help Thunder adjust to carrying weight again, incorporating them into their daily routine. As the last traces of snow melted away and the first green shoots began to appear in the fields, Samuel knew the time had come. On a mild spring morning with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of new growth, he led Thunder out to the paddock, saddle in hand. Thunder's reaction to seeing the saddle was immediate and heartening. His ears pricked forward and he nickered softly, stepping towards Samuel with eager anticipation. It was as if he knew exactly what was happening and was as excited about it as Samuel was. "Easy there, old friend," Samuel chuckled, patting Thunder's neck. "We're going to take this nice and slow, all right?" He took his time saddling Thunder, checking and double-checking every strap and buckle. Thunder stood patiently, but Samuel could feel a subtle tension in the horse's muscles, an eagerness barely held in check. Finally, everything was ready. Samuel stood beside Thunder, one hand on the saddle, the other stroking the horse's neck. "All right, boy," he said softly. "This is it. You tell me if anything doesn't feel right, you hear?" With a deep breath, Samuel put his foot in the stirrup and slowly, carefully swung himself into the saddle. For a moment, neither horse nor rider moved, both adjusting to the familiar yet strange sensation. Then gradually, Samuel felt thunder relax beneath him, and he released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That's it," he murmured, leaning forward to pat Thunder's neck. "Nice and easy." At Samuel's gentle urging, Thunder took a tentative step forward, then another. His gait was stiffer than it had once been, a bit more cautious, but steady. They made a slow circuit of the paddock, Samuel murmuring encouragement the whole way. As they completed the circle and came to a stop, Samuel felt a lump form in his throat. They had done it. Against all odds, defying all expectations, they were riding again. It wasn't the wild, carefree gallop of years past, but in that moment it felt like the greatest ride of Samuel's life. "We did it, boy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We really did it." Thunder turned his head, regarding Samuel with one warm brown eye, and nickered softly. In that sound, Samuel heard everything: joy, triumph, and a deep, abiding trust. It was the sound of a promise kept, of a friendship that had weathered the storm and emerged stronger for it. As they stood there in the spring sunshine, horse and rider reunited, Samuel felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. Gratitude for Thunder's indomitable spirit, for the support of his community, and for the second chance they'd been given. The road ahead would still have its challenges. Thunder would always bear the scars of his injury, both visible and invisible. But Samuel knew now, with a certainty that ran bone deep, that they could face whatever came their way. Together, they had already accomplished the impossible. As Samuel guided Thunder back towards the barn, he found himself looking forward to the future with a hope and excitement he hadn't felt in years. There would be more rides, more adventures, more quiet moments of connection. The story of Samuel and Thunder is not just a tale of overcoming hardship. It's a testament to the power of friendship, unwavering belief, and relentless perseverance. Every step they took, every drop of sweat, and every shared moment was etched with genuine affection and unyielding determination. Through countless trials and heartaches, they proved that although scars may linger as reminders of the past, love and resilience open the door to new beginnings, hope, and endless possibilities. If you found their journey inspiring, be sure to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel so you never miss another uplifting and meaningful story. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you powerful narratives that ignite motivation, offer life lessons on courage and compassion, and remind you of the indomitable spirit within us all. Join our community today, and let's continue to explore the stories that celebrate the triumph of the human spirit. Subscribe now and be a part of this incredible journey.